Hello, everyone. Welcome to the When at Work podcast. You're with Julian Leahy. I'm down here today, and today I'm joined by the wonderful and very intelligent Lynn Yap from London via New York via Malaysia. Welcome to the show, Lynn.
Thank you so much for having me today, Julian.
And Lynn has written a book, a very interesting book called The Altruistic Capitalist. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, Lynn?
Of course. Now, the altruistic capitalist is about how business leaders can create sustainable business while contributing to the well-being of the society, communities, and the environment in which they operate in. I conducted interviews with 50 odd executives, startup founders, as well as nonprofit organizations to learn how they actually create this trifecta impact of creating impact for their communities, for their environment, as well as their investors. So that's what it is about. It's about how capitalism can be used as a force for good.
Interesting. And, capitalism to me is in a lot of ways a force for good. But at the end of the day, when it's driven by the bottom dollar, there are all sorts of problems with that. And, for example, reporting, profits comes often at the expense of environmental stuff and things like that. But what I wanted to ask you was, first of all, there's a lot of CEOs that just will completely dismiss this, but on the other hand, there's a lot of people that are in the trenches in these industries who would actually be really feeling it in their, I guess, hearts that it would be great to do some good things as well as making money at the same time. But the one thing that really I thought would be a problem is like publicly listed companies where they've got stockholders. And I mean, you've got these people that are investing money in these companies. Do they care about these metrics, which don't exist yet, but you are advocating for them? How are you going to breach that to mum and dad investors, I guess?
It's a very long and very long question, very big question, actually. And
That's a
I think
hand
there
grenade.
is yeah, it is. Bring it on. Now, I think there is a shift in terms of how investors, not just the mom and pop investors, but also institutional investors, and how we think about where we're putting our savings, where we're putting our retirement money, and how we want that to grow. Because I think we as a community realize that we can only prosper together if we take care of the people around us. We cannot just focus on short-term profits. So there's a shift, for instance, from what Milton Friedman advocated before in the 1970s, where he said well, in a nutshell, the sole responsibility of companies is to increase profits. Now, there's a shift in that people are starting to think, well, we do need to take care of the environment. We do need to take care of the people around us, especially our employees, in order for businesses to be sustainable. Because if we don't have a sustainable planet, if all our resources are used up, then supply chains will be disrupted. As we have seen in the last few years, supply chains are being disrupted even right now with the current humanitarian crisis in the Ukraine. And so we do need to take care of the people around us, of the environment, in order that we can see profits grow for stockholders, for investors. So it's not just, we can't just focus entirely on profits, because if we don't take care of all the other things first, if our house is not in order, then the profits will not flow.
I really think that's the strongest argument for what you're advocating, the environmental factor, because, I mean, we are kind of at the point where we need to do something. And I mean, what's the point of having a great stock price if everybody's dying out and we've ruined the environment, which we are starting to accept now that we have done. So I think this is a great idea, this book, and I think that it's going to potentially get a lot of interest. How's the response been to it?
I've done a number of workshops, I've done a number of talks as well. Generally, people are very excited about the idea. Usually also in the workshop. Now, I only touch a little bit on it in the book because at the time of publication, This wasn't quite developed yet. But the World Economic Forum also introduced stakeholder capitalism metrics. So these are non-financial reporting metrics that they propose to be mandatory, just as you have to report your profit and loss statement and your balance sheet on an annual basis. They are also proposing that you need to report on non-financial metrics that include people, the communities. So, for instance, how much you're investing in the local communities. Are you creating new jobs? Are you investing in innovation? What are your governance standards? Because some of the issues that we've seen recently, as well as we're not reporting so clearly in terms of how we are governing the business, the company. And then the last one is, of course, the environment. So there are four pillars that are related to the other stakeholders that we were not prioritizing as much as investors that are in the process of being made into, I guess, like a standardized reporting framework that will then start to look at these other stakeholders.
So is that just been suggested, or is there any talk of seriously taking these metrics up?
There are about 50 odd companies that have started to report on these metrics, and about 200 companies have provided their approval or their support for these metrics as well. These metrics were conducted in collaboration with global companies, as well as security, international accounting standards, as well as governing bodies such as the Securities Exchange Commission, so that this could be then, part of how they also review businesses, as just as how businesses are reviewed from a financial perspective. But then there's consistency with this framework in order to review their non-financial metrics.
It would be fantastic if the SEC did that and brought that in and got all of Wall Street on board. I think that would be okay. We've really made the change. But what is the resistance to this, Lynn? Because I can imagine that these multinational companies would not be keen on doing this. Have you heard any resistance to the idea?
I think with every new thing that every new shift and every new change that comes through, there's always a natural resistance. There will be the first initial group of people who will take up and will say, yes, this is something that we want to be part of, and they will join in and be part of that initial group that provides the feedback and refines that process. And then it'll go up, and then more people will adopt the framework, and then finally, that the last group of people will be the laggards who will adopt that framework. So I think that's a natural adoption rate of most things, whether it's innovation or whether it's this type of new way of thinking and new way of doing business. So I think there will be challenges for sure, because systems will have to be put in place. It is not just about saying, oh yeah, we will definitely report on these non-financial metrics. It's also about how can we connect the data, how we can make sure that our different data sources are speaking the same language so that we can report these non-financial metrics correctly. Are we collecting the right kind of data? How can we scale it, especially for large companies where they will operate in different languages? How can we make sure that all our subsidiaries, all our companies in all the different jurisdictions are operating, are speaking, are able to report on these non-financial metrics? So that's one issue, for instance. Having the data architecture, the scalability, and also clean data in order that companies can report these metrics.
Awesome. And what are you doing to promote the book apart from going on podcasts? Have you got how to get on any of the conventional media?
Conventional media? Do you mean such as
Radio, TV, anything like that?
No, I've not been on radio or TV.
Okay.
I do give talks to companies as well as universities. I like speaking at universities, for instance, because I think that students are our future generation. They'll be our future leaders. like to get their feedback on how they think about this. They are going to be the next generation who will lead our largest companies.
Well, the reason I asked that, Lynn, is because I think we have what's called the ABC, which is kind of like PBS in the US.
Mm-hmm.
They would love to report on this, I think. So hopefully some people will start picking up. If you keep doing what you're doing, I really think that you're going to get a lot of interest with this, and hopefully we'll see you in the press soon. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you so much. I'm curious to hear actually from you, Julian. What is, I guess, what has been happening in Australia on this topic?
Well, we have got this whole kind of uprising. We've got a really conservative government at the moment, and
Mm-hmm.
just completely out of touch. And I shouldn't talk about politics, obviously, but I think there's a lot of support for some change, and it's coming from people younger than me, but I sort of agree with it as well. So I just think people are really hungry to change, and the environment is the real big one. Down here, we've had these crazy floods that we've never seen, and we are seeing real problems with the environment, and um, we need to lead the change through the capitalist system. So I think this is a really great idea.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, if our environment is not sustainable, it will be difficult, more expensive for us to live, for us to find food, for us to find sustainable work, even. So definitely, we need to take care of all of the environment and of the people around us first before we focus on profits.
And people criticize Elon Musk, but I mean, for example, I mean, he has created the shift to electric cars where it's now more than a gimmick, and it's really a viable option. And it starts to think, if we can get all the vehicles off fuel, that is one big problem solved, and then energy production as well. So we've got to get off the coal for that. Get on to, I think,
Hmm.
nuclear, but
Hmm.
that's got its own problems. But we've got to do something quickly.
Hmm. And I think as long as we're moving in the right direction, we're thinking more sustainably and we're behaving more consciously, us as individuals as well, doing our part for the environment, doing our part for the community. I think as long as we're moving in that direction, we will end up in a good place. We don't need to fix everything at once. We don't need one big solution that changes everything. But as long as uh, each of us consciously do something, I think that is the way to go.
Excellent. Thanks for coming on, Lynn. I'm going to wrap it up. That was short and sweet. We've done about 40 minutes, but we've got some great info there. And if you want to check out Lynn's book, altruisticcapitalist.com, get her on your podcast as well. And let's help Lynn get the message out there. Thanks for coming on, Lynn.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening and watching, everyone. I'll see you very soon. Another episode.